Welcome to the Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies podcast, where I am Jeremy.
I am Andy.
I was listening back to last week's episode and I realized I didn't do that. I didn't do the
no one knew who you were last week.
Exactly.
I mean, if you have good deduction skills, you could have figured, because I said I was Andy, I think. Did I, or did we just skip it completely?
I think I just jumped right into topical conversation.
Nobody had any idea who we were.
That's right.
It was, you could have just filled in the blanks.
Lost audience. So this week we're going to do sort of a makeshift audience questions.
Yeah.
Because we didn't really have a topic, and fortunately some people have been asking you some opinions on things.
Yeah. So, like, I don't just talk movies on here with you, although you are my favorite person to talk movies with. Let me just say that. I'm sure you're the same way. I just like to strike up movie conversations with people, or people know that I'm a movie guy. And so sometimes questions happen. And I got it's really a culmination of questions over the last couple weeks that have kind of just planted in my brain for a week exactly like this, where there is nothing good coming out in the theaters still. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, we're just going to kind of take that foundation and build off of it.
Yeah. So before we jump into those, though, I did see a few movies, and I'm just going to throw some quick hitters like we did last week at you. Before I do that, I'm just gonna let you know that there's a little pink string on your sleeve.
I saw you looking.
Somebody probably planted on you.
They're out to get us. They're out to. It's probably a rival podcast trying to sabotage us.
For sure. They're after our audience, and we know you, audience. You wouldn't
do that to us. You love us too much. We're just too fun.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Friday, I went to the theater.
Mm-hmm.
Was thinking about doing a triple feature. But I gave up after two. That's just happened.
It's slim pickings.
Yeah, it's slim pickings. So the first movie that I saw was The Killer's Game.
Mm-hmm.
New movie, action movie. That's sort of, it's a little action, like comedy-ish.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a little, I don't know how to describe it. It's not comic booky, because when you say comic book now, you think Avengers. But I just mean like, it's got a little more that, like, when it introduces characters, it gives you like the creative, like, character introduction and titles and things like that, because it wants to be a little more animated, I guess is how you say it, like that. And it was okay.
Yeah. Is that Dave Bautista?
It is.
I like him.
I do too.
Yeah, we've talked about him on here. I really like him.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that movie tanked.
Yeah.
It didn't land.
It was fine. It was one of those things where it's like, I see what they're doing. There's moments of fun, but ultimately, what it really felt like to me, it felt like a Netflix movie.
Yeah.
That was in theaters.
Yeah.
Is what it felt like. Where I talk about how it just never feels like they quite fully bake the idea. Like they get halfway there and then they just sort of fill in the rest as they go.
Yeah.
And that's how it felt. But again, he still comes across good in it.
Yeah.
His love interest in the movie is played by I'm not going to remember how to pronounce her name, but it's the girl who's from Rebel Moon.
Yeah.
And
one of our
now
favorites.
when I see her, all I can think is she just terrible?
Yeah.
And it's like, I guess she's not terrible, but I think because it's so in my mind now that, like, it's probably not fair to her. I kind of look for her being terrible.
Yeah.
And so every time she does something to see him, like,
yeah.
And that's not fair to do any actor or actress, but
we'll have some more Rebel Moon talks in December when we wrap up our worst of the year. Spoiler alert.
I am certain we will.
Yeah.
So then the next movie I saw was a movie called The Critic.
Yeah.
It seems like one of those, like, oh, maybe it's going to be a hidden gem that a lot of people aren't going to see, but looks kind of highbrow. And it's starring Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
Yes, who played famously Gandalf and Magneto in the early X-Men movies. And it was another movie where it's like, okay, it's kind of clever, but not quite as clever as it wants to be, and never quite really commits to what I think they should. And so I was kind of intrigued throughout, but then it just never really gained steam. And I had looked up the kind of critic score before I went, and I was surprised that it was kind of low. And I was like, this looks like it's supposed to be one of those movies for critics.
Right.
In fact, I mean, it's just called The Critic, and it just isn't hitting. And I was like, I kind of see why. Like, it's not that there was the seed of a good movie in there, and it just didn't quite ever blossom into a good movie.
Sheesh.
So,
rough,
and I think it was after
patch.
Those two. Yeah. And I was really thinking the movie, obviously kind of the big movie of the weekend for new releases was Speak No Evil.
Yeah.
And we've talked about a little bit about that before. And I was like, between having heard what happens in the original foreign film And then seeing the preview, I was like, I just feel like I've seen the movie, and I don't feel like I enjoy the movie, and I'm having a hard time wanting.
And the preview alone is uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and you definitely have to be in the right kind of mood to watch that.
Yeah,
and that did decent numbers. It was like 11 million or something.
Yeah. And then Saturday, I decided I was going to stay home and stream a couple movies. One is a movie that came out earlier this year, but I missed it in theaters. It was called Snack Shack. And Snack Shack is a movie that just looks like kind of a typical teen comedy, I guess. Maybe summer guys work at a snack shack at a pool thing. And I'm going to be honest, I would have totally just let this one slip right on by me if I hadn't had a friend who saw it, whose taste I respect, and he said he really enjoyed the movie. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I watched it last night, and I got to say, I was shocked how much I enjoyed the movie.
Nice.
I really enjoyed the movie.
Nice.
It was just different than I expected. It had this real like kind of manic energy early on. It's about these two best friends, and they're like 14, but they're, I mean, already like really sharp hustlers, go-getters who are always like scheming and doing things. And then the Snack Shack just becomes one of their like schemes or part of their bigger plans.
Sure.
And then it turns into also, this girl that moves in next door, and she comes between the two friends essentially. And it has some of those familiar beats, but by the end of the movie, like there was a lot of real emotion, and I'm sitting there going like, I did not expect to like be entertained with the wittiness of this movie, and I did not expect to get really emotional in this movie, and yet it got me doing both.
Nice. That's why we love movies. That's part of the reason why. You just never know.
And then the last one I watched was a movie called Rebel Ridge, which is a new movie on Netflix. It's kind of an action movie. It's my honest thought when I first saw like the opening, I was like, oh, they're basically doing like an upgraded First Blood because this military guy is coming into this small town and the cops start harassing him immediately. It doesn't play out that way, but that is sort of the premise. Like the cops are a little corrupt, and he's dealing with them throughout this movie. And I've been shocked how much I've seen critical response to this movie. It seems like everybody's talking about this movie and reviewing this movie. There were several podcasts on the Ringer network that were talking about this movie. And I got more interested when I saw that the filmmaker was the same guy who made the movie Green Room, which I've talked about here before, which is one of my favorite like horror movies and really distinct and unique. And I was like, okay, so I'm interested to see what this guy does. And the movie was fine. And I ended up being kind of disappointed. Like it's a movie that never, like I talk about just gaining momentum. It never really gains momentum. Every time you're like, okay, here it is. Here's where things are going to start happening. And things just never really, like,
it's too bad.
It just kind of keeps drawing out the, like, things are about to happen tension. And then when it does finally, like, start to be actiony, it's like, well, now this is just not, like, paying off the, if you're going to, like, build this long to the payoff better really pay off.
Yeah.
You know? But so I mean,
that makes
again, of all the movies I saw, none of them were terrible.
Right.
None of them are going to be in contention for my worst of the year or anything like that. They were mostly enjoyable, and then one that I really enjoyed. So overall, I'd say successful weekend.
That is a success, especially like we keep talking about in this just kind of drought of just like must see movies.
Yes, indeed. All right, so today we're going to be talking about a couple of different, just random topics. They don't really have any connection to each other, and that's okay. They don't have to be. And I'm going to go a little bit out of order of the way you sent them to me.
Yeah.
But the first topic is a topic I've actually done before on a solo podcast years ago when I would dabble and much more infrequently do solo podcasts, and that's favorite movie posters.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we want to necessarily go Mount Rushmore with this, but as we were texting, I said, the thing I like about doing anything like Mount Rushmore is that it limits me, because when I start going through favorite movie posters, I get a list so long, and I'm like, well, it's going to be a really long stretch of podcast where I'm just naming movie posters, so maybe we need to limit ourselves. So
I'm fine with that.
We'll do our personal Mount Rushmores, and this deserves one of those like really gigantic disclaimers of, any day I could mix up these. So
this is not set in
like,
stone.
Isn't this your favorite movie poster? I'd be like, it's one of them, and I probably said at some point that it was a favorite.
Yeah.
So
it's a cool topic too, because the movie poster is important. I fear that it's lost a little bit of its importance now in this modern era where we know so much about movies ahead of time. Certainly long before I was around, but in my day growing up, that was your first there were sometimes when I didn't even know a movie was coming out because I'm so old, there was no internet until I saw the poster.
Right.
So the poster was vitally important because it had to, especially back in the day, that movie posters had to work harder. It had to grab your attention and it had to make you go, what is that? When does it come out? And yes, I want to go see that. So the movie poster used to carry, I think, more responsibility than it does now. Now that, we have all of our social media and you get glimpses of movies years in advance, like James Gunn's Superman. I noticed there's a couple months ago, he on Twitter or X put a picture of the dude as Superman. So that kind of stuff I think is replacing in some ways the movie poster.
Yeah, that's really good points.
Yeah, and so I love to think about and talk about and look backwards on movie posters. It's a fun conversation.
And even though I am agreeing 100% with what you say, I'm looking at my list and going, I skewed a lot more modern than I expected.
Oh, mine are old. We're going to be the complete opposite.
I figured as much. And listen, on my long list, I had a lot of older movies. And for whatever reason, when I narrowed it down, it just, there's just several, I say more recent, within the last 20 years. I consider recent posters. There's one that is definitely on my Mount Rushmore, but I was like, maybe I shouldn't even put in there because I know it'll be on Andy's.
It's okay if we have overlapping Mount Rushmores.
I've got a couple of alternatives just in case, just to give me the freedom to talk about something else. But I'm going to let you go first, Andy.
I'm going to get the obvious one out of the way, and probably the one you're thinking, I got to go Jaws.
Yeah.
I just think that is the all-time, so I would say this too. Part of my criteria is the movie poster, much like the trailer. To me, and posters typically don't. I do not want it to give anything away, which I know might be stating the obvious, but we live in this world of just spoilers and information everywhere.
We talked about it with the Abigail poster.
Yeah.
That even if the preview hadn't given it away, the poster gives away that Abigail, the ballerina girl, is the vampire.
Yes. And I don't like that. Jaws is such a great example of it manages to tell you exactly what the movie is while giving nothing away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that, it's a sketch or a drawing or whatever you want to call it. It's not even a person in the movie, the girl swimming and just that shark coming up, and you see that and you go, like I said, somehow I get what this movie is, and yes, I want to see it.
Yeah.
What else do you want from a poster?
For sure. And the really funny thing about the Jaws poster is the shark is so front and center on that poster, and then you see the movie and it's like,
I know,
the shark's barely in it.
Yeah. And it's it doesn't try and be cute. There's not a bite taken out of where it writes Jaws. It's just red letters, girl, shark, ocean, boom. Piece of cake. So simple, so effective, so striking. The GOAT, in my opinion.
It is, I'm not going to argue with you on it. I think it is such a nice, clean poster. I'm with you. I think one thing that'll become abundantly clear as I make my picks is I think simpler is better with movie posters. Too much on it, and I kind of just get lost in it. Yep. So there's some movie posters that are very iconic that I just don't love because as soon as there's too much going on, I mean, almost anything with big ensembles, Star Wars movies or even the later Avengers movies, it just starts to be so much on it that I like a really simple, clean poster.
I do too, and I also just don't. I'll say this: I just don't like we'll just slap everyone's face up on the poster. Avengers Endgame is a great example. I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. The poster is just there's, like you said, number one, there's a ton going on. It's everyone just kind of it's just everyone's on the poster just looking heroically off in the distance. And to me, and I love my Marvel, but that just feels lazy. So yeah, that's not a thing I like when they just slap faces up on a poster.
Yeah. All right, my first pick is going to be I'm going with a Spielberg alternate, and that's Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And the reason
iconic.
You want to talk about simple, it is just the Jurassic Park symbol on a black background, and that symbol is perfect. It's the T-Rex skeleton roaring. It says Jurassic Park, and you see that, and it's kind of the same thing. Without giving anything away, without even understanding, somehow you just look and you know, it's a dinosaur park.
Yep.
I'm in.
You had me. Yeah, it's you had me at Dinosaur Park. Exactly. Yeah. It's on my list.
Awesome. And so, I could go, I guess say more, but it's just going to sound exactly like a lot of the Jaws stuff.
Yeah.
And it's probably one of those things where if I'm really comparing the two, Jaws will always beat out Jurassic Park. It's first. It's a little more iconic. But if I can't have Jaws, or I could, but if I try not to have Jaws, I'm going to slide Jurassic Park right in there.
Yeah, and it's like it meets all your criteria. It's just a neat, clean poster. And that's what I mean, too. Like now, if they made that movie, it'd be like Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Gold. It would be all their faces just, kind of looking off at something. And there'd probably be the big, the T-Rex, like with its mouth of the actual T-Rex. And it would just be way too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What's your next pick, Andy?
It's one we just talked about a couple weeks ago. Alien.
Yeah. It's an iconic one.
And I looked it up again this afternoon, and it's like same thing. It's giving nothing away. There is a little bit more going on in that poster, I would say, but not. It doesn't feel cluttered. It's not overwhelming. It's the egg. The genius part, I think, is just the glow coming out of the egg, and then underneath it, you're just kind of seeing that planet, I guess it is, where all the eggs are in the original Alien. And I was thinking, like, of course, back in the day, you're seeing the poster before you know anything about the movie. And so it's showing you stuff from the movie. You don't know that at the time, but it's all stuff that would pique your interest. Like, what is this egg? It's ripping open. The movie's called Alien, so it's like you're assuming there's an alien in there. Of course, they don't show it. It's like that poster, everything in that poster just leaves you wanting more. And it's just really cool. And then, you throw in, like we talked about, I think the famous tagline, in space, no one can hear you scream. Boom. Sign me up. Give me a ticket. As I always say, take my money. It's a great poster. It's a great looking poster.
Yeah. No notes.
Yeah, I know. Like, this may not be as long a conversation as we wanted, but yeah, it's just like, okay, now I'm going to go see that movie.
Yes. All right. My next pick is one that we've also talked about on here before. And it's an alternate poster. It's for The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
It's the Joker behind it.
Yep.
It's like he's behind that pane that's just distorting him just enough, and he's writing "Why so serious?" with blood, and he's got the streaked smile,
and he's kind of like he's his posture is really weird.
Yes.
Yeah.
And because you see that and you just go, he looks menacing. That looks incredible. To quote you, take my money.
Oh yeah, that's one of the all-time. That was one too where it was like, I remember that really well. We were all, as movie nerds, we were all desperate to get a sneak peek of the Joker.
Yes.
It's like, there was a lot of talk. We've talked this through, Heath Ledger is the Joker. And then there was like, okay, it's like people started slowly coming around. And then you started to hear the buzz of like, this is going to be incredible. So you wanted that look so bad. And to just have that look teased for you was amazing. It's amazing.
Yes.
And that poster still holds up. It's awesome. Another one too, where if you want to combine that tagline, just the "Why so serious" line, like how is that just perfect for the movie and the character?
Yeah, because why so serious? Done in blood and like his sloppy writing, where it's like it perfectly encapsulates that Joker.
It does.
Where what he's saying is like the very nature of how you're saying is why it's so serious, because you're doing it violently and with with blood makes it serious, but you're being goofy and deranged about it.
Just an all-time classic poster. Yeah. All right, I'm staying in the 70s. I told you I was going to go old.
Perfect.
This is just a personal favorite. The original Halloween.
On my long list as well.
Nice. And I'm going to keep saying the same things, but they all apply. Gives nothing away. Not a thing. No Michael Myers on that poster. Nothing. Pumpkin, hand, butcher knife, and the title Halloween, which I will forever maintain. It's crazy that no one had come along before 1978 and made a horror movie called Halloween. How that never happened, I don't know. But, like, come on. If you're a horror movie fan and you see that poster, I think there's a 0% chance you're not going to see that movie.
Yeah. And again, I think actually it led to a lot of people mistakenly thinking that the Halloween mask was like a jack-o'-lantern helmet, because it's a jack-o'-lantern with a knife. It looks almost like, when people look at it, they go, oh, that's a person wearing a jack-o'-lantern mask holding a knife. And then you realize, no, the Halloween mask is actually just that plain it's actually William Shatner, isn't it?
It's a William Shatner Star Trek mask.
But then just painted white. Yeah. Great movie poster.
And again, you try to imagine like in Halloween's 1978. So you don't know anything about, and then you see that poster and, like I said, it's telling you without telling you, here's a horror movie called Halloween. There's a butcher knife on this poster. So I'm sure the logical jump at that time was like some kind of killer running around. And then you go and see that movie and your, whole world unfolds in front of you that poster didn't tip you off to at all. And it's just like, man, that's just great. And again, kind of a theme, not trying to get overly cute or creative or, not all these posters I'm naming, they're not unoriginal, but they're not overachieving and trying to like, oh, look how clever we are and look what we did. Just boom. 3 great posters, 3 great movie titles. The 70s were the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My next poster, again, just sticking with this theme of loving simple and just a thought-provoking image. It's a movie poster for the movie Logan.
Yeah.
And it's just a little girl holding Logan's hand.
Yes.
And his claws are out. It's his grizzled looking, kind of veiny claws out hand and that little soft hand holding his. And you see that and you're just like,
what is this?
Yeah, I'm in. Like, I don't know what this is, but there's, I'm getting weird emotions over just seeing this like tender little hand being held by Logan's, clawed hand.
It's a great poster. And that's the route I wish that Marvel would have taken instead of just for every one of their movies, just slapping the person up on there. I always thought it would have been so cool, like in Avengers Endgame. There's that really great scene where Thanos, he uses his ship and it like beams him down to Earth basically. And he's kind of standing there like he looks menacing and that light is beaming. It's like, that would have been, there's your poster right there.
Yeah.
That would have been so cool. And that's, that Logan poster is a good example where, just not taking a scene from the movie necessarily, but not just Hugh Jackman, and I get it. You want to put your stars up on your poster. I do, but I just want those posters to leave me wanting more, not just, well, here's everyone who's in the movie up on the poster.
Yeah.
It's a really great choice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Man, I was going to do Dark Knight, but I'm going to pull the same thing as you. So I'm going to we'll go 4 for 4 in the 70s. The Exorcist.
On my list as well.
Dude. So does a really cool thing where the poster is an actual scene from the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But they managed to find a scene that gives absolutely nothing away, somehow is really chilling and scary, and you have no context at the time. It's the Max von Sydow character, the exorcist. In fact, he's standing outside the house that the little girl is in who is possessed, and it's dark and it's street light and it's shadow and it's just kind of him looking up at the house, and that is it. And you just go, man, for all the things that happen in The Exorcist, which is all the things, they avoided that temptation to put the girl, the girl with her eyes rolled back in her head, nothing. Or, like what I mean too with not trying to be overly cute, like you don't see like a silhouette of the girl in the window or something.
No, it's really just like a beam of light from the window and his silhouette standing looking up at it.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't even know what the Exorcist guy looks like. It's just like you said, his silhouette. And I don't know that I can think of a ton of examples of the movie poster, having a shot from the movie just as the poster. It's really cool.
Yeah. I'm just going to say, to answer that, one of my all-time favorite movies, Tombstone, is an example of that, where it's just the 4 guys walking down the street. They're walking to the gunfight at OK Corral, and the poster just was like, well, let's just take a still of that, them walking down the street, and that worked. And I almost picked that one, but I didn't, mainly because I thought that's a movie poster that's elevated because of my love for the movie. And I want to pick movies that, yes, I'm going to love all these movies, but that I go, even if I didn't know the movie, I just remember the poster being like.
Yeah.
So my last one is actually the most recent of movies that I have out here, and that's John Wick 2, because I love the John Wick and surrounded by guns pointed at him. Just a circle of guns pointed at him.
It's really cool.
It's just, again, kind of a provoking, like, oh, this is going to be a movie where John Wick's, you see that and you just go, John Wick's taking on the world at me.
Oh,
and that's all you need to know.
That's all you need to know.
John Wick's going to fight a bunch of guys.
Yeah. Yep. I love posters. It's just like, we know what we are, and we know what message we're sending with this poster.
Exactly.
Yeah. I feel kind of bad for only staying in the 70s, but those just, you like what you like.
Well, and I mean, I guess I'm sure if we had somebody who grew up in the 50s, he'd say, oh, there's all these iconic posters that came before these, but there's always going to be a point in your life where the earliest posters, later posters are just become new examples of that. So as I talk about like Jurassic Park and Jaws, like they have a similar like idea to them, but Jaws came first, so you're always going to default to like the one I saw and knew about first, as opposed to the ones that come along and might do something cool and similar, but are just remind you of something previous.
Yeah. I wonder if Spielberg, how much pull he had in his posters, because he had the E.T. poster is really great. It's just the alien finger and the little kid's finger touching and the glowing light. And I don't know, he just had some cool ones over the years. I think Private Ryan's just a really cool, like kind of the silhouette type of thing of the Tom Hanks character just kind of standing with a gun, but it's a little dark. I think that's the original Saving Private Ryan poster, but yeah, posters are just a fun conversation to have.
Yeah, and because we limited ourselves, there's plenty of meat on the bone. We could come back and give you plenty more.
I could rattle off 20 right now
of great movies, but we're going to move on to our next topic of conversation, and this one is best opening scenes in a movie.
Yeah,
again, I'm going for the Mount Rushmore idea just to limit, because again, I wrote down. I went through and wrote down probably about 12, and then I was like, let's pick out 4, so we don't talk all day about every different opening sequence I like.
Yep. So yeah, in the opening scene, it doesn't need a lot of explanation. You want, just you want your attention grabbed. You want something intriguing needs to happen. You need to, and not all movies, some movies are the slow unfold. Right. So, I don't mean it has to just be everything happens, but something has to happen where you go, I want to invest my 2 hours into this.
Absolutely. And then, you could start getting into nitpicks about, is this the technical opening scene or because I don't know if you're gonna, I guess I'm spoiling here probably, but I don't know if you're gonna pick the opening scene from Saving Private Ryan. It's one of the most famous opening scenes. Someone can nitpick and be like, well, you got the scene of him walking through and it's like, just shut up, that's not the opening scene. The opening
we know what the opening scene is.
I've got another example for sure that somebody could nitpick like that. And I'm like, the real opening scene is...
You know what? We don't play this card very often, but let's just say it. This is our podcast. Yeah. We can do whatever we want.
Exactly.
We set the rules.
Since I already kind of ruined this one for you, you want to elaborate on it?
I really... Sometimes it's not about being, cute and clever and finding some obscure movie. The classics are classics for a reason. And, we've talked about it. We talked about it with Woody when we did our war movies. Like I said on there before, and I stand by my statement, if someone said, I believe for a fact that is the greatest 15 minutes of film ever shot, or whatever, however long it is, I'm not going to argue very loudly. It's just incredible. It's somehow manages to be heartbreaking and, I hate to say this, but entertaining at the same time. I know it wasn't entertaining, all respect to everyone who was there, but, it's like cinematically, I guess, it's the master, Spielberg, and he's just unleashing this battle on us. And it's, like I said, it's terrible and it's heartbreaking, but you're also you can't take your eyes off the screen. It's unbelievable. And it's got to be the all-time best example of, war is hell. And it's terrible and it's violent and it's bloody and it's all the things. And it's such an achievement. It's such how in the world did they do this and make this cohesive? And it's incredible. It's just incredible. I know that's not a very, I'm not saying really smart words or articulating it very well, but I don't know what else to say. It's just insane. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, you said it. Spielberg's kind of the master. It was probably him at the peak of his powers.
Yeah.
Not to, I feel bad saying that, not like Spielberg's gone downhill or something.
But
everybody's got like a peak, a prime where they're just, at throwing their best stuff, their fastest fastball. And that was around the time Spielberg was just everything he touched was gold. And you said it, like the beginning of a movie has got to do, like you said, several things. It's got to draw you in, but also a good beginning of the movie draws you in because it's entertaining in its own right, but it also sort of like sets the stage for the movie. It introduces characters in a natural way, and it does that, like, especially when you rewatch it and you're going like, and you start seeing how, it was introducing me to all these characters as we were progressing through the action. You really, you definitely get Tom Hanks's kind of character without even learning about his character as you're following him up this battlefield. And then, of course, it's in war movies. It's always a little bit of a cheat, but I don't mean that in a bad way, where you're emotionally going to feel invested or, feel for these people in this circumstance, you don't have to have the movie like, well, you need to get to know these people before you care. When you see the American troops storming the beach of Normandy, you're invested already. You're emotionally like, when there's a reason people were emotionally distraught watching the opening scene of this movie.
My mom, it about did my mom in when she went to see it. Yeah, it's like I said, you don't always have to get overly creative or overthink it. I mean, it's one of the all-time great scenes in movies, and just the fact that movie still kept a momentum. A lesser, I think, filmmaker or less talented ensemble in that movie, and everything peaks in that first 15 minutes, and then it's kind of downhill. But oh boy, it's such an achievement. It's something I'm so grateful that I saw in the theater.
Yeah, I missed it in the theater.
That's too bad. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna choose one that probably won't surprise anybody. It's from my favorite movie, The Social Network, and that's the opening scene that I titled "The Bar Breakup," in which we meet Mark Zuckerberg. He's talking to his girlfriend at the time in this bar. Everything about the scene is fascinating to me. From the way that it's filmed, the audio, where there's a lot of background noise. They wanted to make it sound like you are in a bar where it's hard to hear people.
Right.
Because you're listening, and at first you're kind of like, I don't know how you squint ears, but you're doing whatever the equivalent of that is, where you're
you're probably leaning in.
Yeah, and so you're really locked in this conversation, and then it's got that Sorkin dialogue that's just fast-paced and moving back and forth. And it just tells you everything you need to know about the character.
It sure does.
Because he's kind of dismissive of her and condescending, and he's a jerk. So by the time she's like fed up with him, you get it. But then as soon as she's fed up with him, he's suddenly becomes aware of it and tries to apologize and make up for it. But you just kind of get the sense of this guy, like, he doesn't get when he steps on people's feelings, and then even when he's trying to make it right, he can't stop. He kind of keeps stepping on your feet, or hurting your feelings. And so, and it just propels right into, the opening credits and the great score of him running across campus, but it propels right into, then he does his first hack and set up this website that leads to this great scene and the way it's filmed. So it does everything an opening scene in the movie should to me. It's entertaining, it establishes the character, and it propels us right into the story.
Absolutely. And I think for a movie like The Social Network, an opening scene is vitally important, because like we talked about it when we went through, when we did the whole episode on The Social Network, kind of a hard sell type of movie.
Yes.
Where it's like, hey, we're going to make this really exciting movie about Facebook.
Yeah. So
it's like, I don't necessarily, I'm not saying like, boy, you've got to get everyone in the beginning, but maybe you do. It's like, that's a movie is like you almost, because it's not action, it's not horror, those type of things are easier to pull off, where it's like, how do I hook everyone on this kind of very talky melodrama or drama? I don't know, it just feels like that is an important scene to get right, because I could see people, just maybe your average moviegoers, like, if the opening scene doesn't land, just going like, I don't really know if I want to stick with this movie or not.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I think it's really important for something like The Social Network. And man, you're right. They just nail it.
Yeah. Thanks for the help in describing of why that's a great scene, Andy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, what's your next pick?
Listen, I'm not going for originality today. Okay. I'm also going to go with my favorite movie, and I'm going to talk about Jaws again, because I just think that is... What more could you possibly want from the opening of a shark attack movie than just one of the most horrifying, terrifying scenes probably ever? And it does, it's like, it's a very simple scene, but it does a lot. It establishes just the terror and the dread. You don't see the shark. That's very important. And, we've talked about it in length, so I won't dwell on it too long. But I think originally Spielberg, had conceived like he wasn't going to hide the shark, and you're going to see it right in that opening. But something about that decision, to not show the shark. We talked about it when we broke down Jaws. We did Jaws and Social Network back-to-back weeks. Kudos to the girl who actually just recently passed away, like a month or two ago. Yeah, but like she seemed so genuinely horrified, and we talked about it. Maybe she was, because they were yanking her around on these harnesses and stuff.
Leg,
yeah. So it's like that. You watch that movie and you're like, my gosh, this is horrifying. And then just the, woman alone. I mean, the guy's on the shore, but he's passed out. The water, it's dark. All those decisions. We always say this: a movie is a series of decisions. And to start that movie in the dark, and you get the view of kind of the shark's point of view up at the woman, and it makes you just feel so vulnerable and you're just terrified. You're like, oh my gosh, is that going to happen to me the next time I'm in the ocean? And that movie opens with that. It gives you that sense of dread. And to me, that sense of dread never leaves the movie because that opening scene is so effective.
You're 100% right.
Yeah.
That is, I remember when I was answering the question one time of favorite horror movie, and I wanted to say Jaws, and I was like, well, does Jaws count as a horror movie? And I'm like, that opening scene, yes,
that's
absolutely
a horror movie
qualifies
scene. That is a horror movie
as a horror movie. But there's something about how scary that moment is when she's being dragged around by the shark and she's screaming for her life, and then when she disappears and it all goes dead calm. Silent. That contrast,
it's amazing.
So chilling.
It's amazing. Just to that movie starts and probably, I'm going to guess 2 to 2.5 minutes later, she's getting attacked by that shark. Yeah. He knows exactly how to just dive into this movie, no pun intended. Just a bunch of kids, it's the 70s, they're smoking pot and drinking beer on the beach. Him and the guy and the girl make eye contact. Next thing you know it, she's skinny dipping in the ocean. That's all you need. There's no backstory, there's no real development. And a lot of times we criticize movies for that, but some movies don't need it. And this doesn't need it. And we still are just off and running.
Well, and you're about to get a lot of backstory
and
character development. And so it's kind of a nice thing to give you right there at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because if that movie started with, okay, now we're going to meet Chief Brody and his family.
Let's get to the shark.
Yeah. But because they give you 2 minutes, like you said, at the beginning, the next 30 minutes, you're not thinking, well, nothing's happening because something so big has already happened.
Exactly. I love it so much. Any reason to talk about Jaws?
Yeah, that's a great one. That was actually one of my picks, and that's nice. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'll replace it. Maybe I'll just say, good pick. I'll probably replace it. But I'm going to go with another obvious one. Maybe you had it on your list too because it's one of the most iconic, Inglourious Basterds.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said it before. I still think it's Tarantino's best work, even if it's not my necessarily favorite to watch of his. But that opening scene with the interrogation of what's his name, Hans Landa, Hans Landa, and just the Frenchman and his family.
Oh my gosh!
And the first time you see it, it's just there for a moment. It's a scene that lasts how long? I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes, whatever it is. It feels.
I'd say it's probably pushing 10. Yeah, I would guess.
When you're first watching it, you're kind of just like, what is happening? Like this is really going on. But then it all changes in that moment when it pans down.
Everything changes.
The people are on the floorboard, and then you're like, oh gosh,
and then it goes on for a little bit. It
keeps going on, and you kind of have this slow revelation that this German officer is not just doing routine work. Like he
knows what he's doing.
He's poking at this guy, and he's waiting for the weakness, and when it finally it does happen, he makes that switch of hey, I know. He switches the languages, and he's like, if you tell me where they are, I'll spare your family, and it's just and then it ends with the massacre of the family, except for the one girl who gets away.
I know, and it's in the course of that scene, you're kind of hooked with the dialogue. You get some laughs. Christoph Waltz somehow manages to smokes this pipe, and it almost makes you chuckle because of his mannerisms and stuff. Then you're you get the revelation. Then you're scared. You're tense. It's a master class in how to do things and to exercise the patience that Tarantino does.
Yeah, and it's a great example of the thing we talk about all the time: show, don't tell.
Yep.
And I mean that literally. It sounds obvious to be show because they pan down and show the family, but what I mean is. The farmer, it doesn't give away when he first shows up.
Nope.
Are they hiding somebody? He's trying to act natural, but you could tell there's a tension no matter what from the farmer. With Hans, you can't tell what he knows until he finally shows. So there's so many, like you said, questions. You're trying to figure out this puzzle piece.
Your brain is going the whole time you're watching that scene.
Until it finally reveals itself. And the amazing thing is it doesn't lose effect when you rewatch it and do know it's still just as compelling.
You're hooked. And kudos, of course, Christoph Waltz, he won an Oscar for that movie, basically just from that scene alone. Mm-hmm. But kudos to the farmer. Mm-hmm. He has to, like you said, he has to portray he can't give it away. He can't freak out, but you can tell this guy is nervous and he's uncomfortable, and that guy has to do a lot too. Mm-hmm. And that's an amazing scene. Another one I was fortunate enough to see in the theater.
Yeah, I did catch that one in the theater, so I was glad about that. All right, Andy, your next pick.
Scream.
Oh, that's such a good pick. I didn't even write that on my list. I just didn't think of it.
Yeah. Man, this one, there's so much, like, so I'll give a quick backstory. I think we've talked about Scream on here a little bit. I like to talk about horror movies. Scream just kind of came out of nowhere. 1996, horror movies were dead. Mm-hmm. Franchises and crappy Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween sequels had just killed horror movies. They were dead. December of 96, I remember this like it was yesterday. I went to the theater because this movie called Scream was coming out. It had no buzz, no anticipation. I read about it in Entertainment Weekly, and I knew it was a Wes Craven movie. Nightmare on Elm Street is one of my favorite movies. It's like, I'll go see Scream. Unbelievable to go see that movie that really wasn't expected to make any kind of splash or impact, and to see that opening scene. It is scary. It is shocking. It's got so much going on. It's, first of all, if you weren't around, it's hard to explain on this. Drew Barrymore was a star.
The biggest star in the movie.
By far. And she was on the poster, I think, all these things. But she was kind of a mystery, too, because her star had fallen. She had, I think, a lot of personal problems. Mm-hmm. But then what'd she do? She popped up in, like, Batman Forever or something, and like in a bit role. And people were like, oh, Drew Barrymore, I hope she's doing better. I like her. People always were rooting for her. Mm-hmm. So you see her in this horror movie, you're like, okay, cool, Drew Barrymore. And then it starts out, the killer, and literally starts out with the phone ringing and she answers it.
It jumps right in.
Immediately. And then they start talking about Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. And you're just like, whoa. So that's cool. Killer shows up. Iconic Scream mask, like we talked about. Me and you and Molly talked about horror movies. So that's cool right off the bat. Oh, he's getting her. Man, he's really, she's obviously going to get away. Oh my gosh, he just killed her. I cannot tell you what that shock was like in 1996 and how upsetting that is. Like because this is pre-cell phone, she's on the phone still as he's dragging her body and she's not quite dead. And her mom picks up the phone and it's really upsetting.
Yeah.
The rest of the movie is clearly, it's a horror movie and it's violent, but it's very tongue in cheek. That opening scene is not tongue in cheek. It is straight up just horrifying. Drew Barrymore is so good in that scene. It's staged really well. Like, she doesn't do anything where you're like, you idiot, what are you doing? Like, she puts up a fight. She tries to run away. She does the things that, as a horror movie fan, I wanted to see the character do. Mm-hmm. And she did it. And that scene literally ends with her dead body hanging from a tree with her guts just spilled out everywhere. And that scene ends, and you're just like, what is happening right now? It was a new thing to kill off a star in the opening scene of a movie. So Scream, well, it is a famous movie and a famous franchise. I do think in some ways almost underrated for all the things that it did. I guess it probably got what it deserved. Like, it was probably properly rated.
Yeah.
But you think backwards on it and you're like, man, they broke a lot of new ground in that movie.
They did. And then we talk about all the time how there'll be like a run of movies following another movie's example. There was a whole run of horror movies trying to recreate what Scream did.
They did. And they definitely tried. And even the Scream movies still follow that formula. Somebody always dies at the beginning. But, man, Scream 1 did it first and did it best. And it's just one of those things. Another one. So thankful that I saw that in the theater. And I'm telling you, our jaws were on the floor. And I watched it this afternoon on YouTube. Watch that scene. It is still a really well done scene. Obviously knowing what you know now, but it's still effective. So just a unbelievable way to start that movie.
All right. My next one, little less of an iconic pick. I'm just going to say that.
That's all right.
But I often say this is one of my favorite opening 10 minutes of a movie, and that's the opening 10 minutes of White Men Can't Jump.
Oh, dude. No, that's a great answer.
And one of the reasons is I like the movie White Men Can't Jump, but I always say the first 10 minutes of White Men Can't Jump
is the best part of the movie.
Time. Yeah. And it's all it is it's when you first meet the character. Woody Harrelson shows up at this playground court.
He's perfect. He plays the dorky
Wesley
white guy.
Snipes is playing his game, and the con is on. They recruit him into the game because they need a replacement. They're making fun of him. He's dressed goofy, and then he helps them win the game with some great passes. And then Wesley Snipes still talking trash, and he's like, well, bet you can't shoot. So then they do this bet of who can hit the most shots. And the whole time, just the back and forth. And
it's
then
incredible.
Finally, at the end, Woody Harrelson drops it a little bit and basically right before Wesley Snipes shoots his last shot, Woody Harrelson's like, "Don't worry, I've hustled a lot better players than you."
Kind of whispers into his ear. It's incredible.
The whole sequence is, yes, both of them. I mean, Wesley Snipes, people forget, was like really good at that time because his star fell so hard fast.
But he was good. He was a big star.
He was such a charismatic guy on screen, and Woody Harrelson was perfect for that role.
Oh my gosh.
Everything about it, like, yes, that is one of those scenes that back in the day, when you're watching cable TV and flipping channels, if I see White Men Can't Jump is coming on, I'm like, well, I'm watching that first 10 minutes of this movie.
I can tell you, I did not see White Men Can't Jump in the theater. I remember renting the VHS, watching that opening scene, rewinding it, and just watching it again.
Yeah.
And all that, just street basketball trash talk felt so natural. Mm-hmm. It just felt like the director was like, all right, I'm rolling the camera, just go. Like it felt improv, and it's incredible. And it's like Wesley Snipes thinks he's conning Woody Harrelson. Woody Harrelson's playing the long con the whole time. So enjoyable.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that one.
That's just a good movie.
It is.
It's a good movie. Yeah. Yeah. It's a really great choice.
Yeah. I'm still annoyed that they tried to remake it last year. I never watched it. I
refuse to watch that.
Yeah.
I'm not watching that. Nope.
Yep. All right. I think you got one more pick.
I do have one more pick. Again, I am not original at all today, but I'm going to go Dark Knight.
I'm going to be honest. I had a feeling that was going to be your pick.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we've already talked about today, and we've done a whole Dark Knight episode. There was such an anticipation for that movie. There was such an anticipation for the Joker character. And I don't know, if Nolan purposely wrote the Joker in the opening scene just because he knew that's what we were all looking for, or if it just, I don't know. I don't feel like he really caters. He does what he wants to do.
Right.
But with the months of build up to like, what is this Joker character going to be like? For him to be in an opening scene like that and go like, you know what? You just had that. It's like all of our expectations are going to be met. And you go back and watch it, and he's really not doing hardly anything. I mean, you don't even know. I mean, you kind of know, but you don't officially know it's the Joker till right towards the end of that scene. What doesn't kill you makes you stranger, and he rips off the mask and he kind of does this thing. Mm-hmm. But man, I don't know how else you would introduce that character. And like now that you know that's how they did it, it doesn't feel like there's any other way they could have done it.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
It is. And the one thing I'll say with rewatches is it moves a lot faster. I think it's a really quick opening scene.
I'd say,
because
5 minutes?
For as much as happens,
a lot happens. Because they kind of take over the bank.
Yeah.
They knock each other off one by one.
Yeah.
A bus drives through. Yeah. The Joker and William Fichtner kind of have their little brief shootout. He puts a bomb in his mouth and then drives off in the bus. That's a lot.
It is.
But it's all just boom, 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 boom,
yeah,
boom.
It moves.
Yeah, it's just an incredible scene. It looks incredible. It does the thing like I talked about when we talked about The Dark Knight. It really does a good job of just establishing Gotham City and how important Gotham City is going to be. Like, I don't know how he pulls that off, but he just makes that city feel big and important, and it feels like a real lived-in place. I think it was shot. They shoot that in Chicago. I know they shot a lot of the movie in Chicago. I don't know if that particularly is Chicago, but I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just such a great way to start that movie. And if I remember this right, maybe this is the way I want to remember it, but I swear when I was in the theater opening weekend for that movie, when he does lift off the mask, there was like you heard some of that. Like, even though we all knew it was the Joker, finally after months to see him up on the screen, it was a really, really cool moment.
Yeah, that's a great pick.
Yeah,
so I had Jaws on my list, and I was like, Andy will pick that. I put The Dark Knight on my list, and I was like, Andy will pick that. And not that there's a problem with having overlap, but just trying to diversify. So my final pick, I decided to go super goofy with this one, just give comedy some love. And I'm going with the opening scene of Super Troopers, which I titled Messing with Stoners. And the reason again is it's almost like White Man Can't Jump, where I think Super Troopers is a good movie, but like if you just show someone the opening 10 minutes, you'd be like, you've basically seen the movie. You get it. You get the idea of these cops just being goofy. And it's got so many iconic lines just in that opening scene with these, again, it just opens with these goofy teenagers doing drugs in a car, getting pulled over by these cops, and the cops are just messing with them.
Oh, yeah. That's a really great choice. I would know one that I wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah. So we really don't need to linger on that one long, but it just...
No, we need to break down what they really... There's a lot... No, there's... Yeah. That's a great choice.
Yes. Thank you.
The opening scene is it's really fun to talk about.
Yeah.
And just like with our posters, I have 10, 12 more I could probably spout off.
And just to say this, there's a lot of my favorite movies. I was kind of thinking through them that don't really have anything that fascinating at the beginning. They just have
it's
to
not
kind
a
of establish them.
requirement.
Like so. You don't have to have a great opening scene.
No.
You can still have a great movie. And like you said earlier, some movies need to have. You just have to establish more because Jaws is a movie about shark attacks, so you can jump right in with a shark attack.
Mm-hmm.
Some movies you can't jump right into some form of the action without building up the world first.
Some movies you just can't get the payoff until you establish. I was thinking something like like Shawshank Redemption doesn't have any kind of incredible opening scene. It's the Andy Dufresne character in court getting sentenced to life in prison. It's not bad, but it's not like a, you know what I mean? It's the start of a story. So it's not a requirement, but.
And then there's a lot of good movies that the opening, there's not really like a clear opening scene. It's like an opening montage almost to like establish the world. You think of maybe this isn't a great example. Goodfellas, it's going to have narration and a lot. It kind of just gives you a ton of information early in the movie where you go like, was that all just count as one scene?
I know.
I don't know because there's so much.
And there's movies like Back to the Future. It just doesn't require itself to. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. It just starts out really slow. It kind of the camera just panning through Doc Brown's office. Marty McFly comes in and plays the guitar. Nothing major happens. It's just setting things up for later. So not a requirement, but when you can nail the opening scene, that's a good thing.
Yes, absolutely. All right, the next one, maybe we can move just slightly quicker through.
Yeah.
Movies I like that people wouldn't guess. I came up with 4.
I didn't have 4, but my one is just a bombshell.
All right. Oof. Should we start with that?
Yeah, that's up to you. You're the boss.
I kind of want to because now that you've said it, I don't think I can even focus on what I was thinking of.
You're the boss.
Andy, drop that bomb.
Jeremy, I like the movie A Walk to Remember with Shane West and Mandy Moore.
Whoa!
I just think it is a really sweet, charming movie. And let me explain myself before you and everybody else turns against me and beats me up. I'm not saying it's a great movie. I'm not saying it's one of my favorite movies. The question is, what is a movie that you like that people wouldn't expect you to like?
Yes.
It is probably a movie targeted for like preteen girls. But I just remember watching, I think it was just on TV one night. And I think we just didn't have anything to do. It was like one of those, we're just going to lay here and watch TV kind of nights. That movie was on. So like, okay, I'll watch it. That movie, I don't even know what year it came out. I think it's like 2003, somewhere in that neck of the woods.
That range.
It kind of existed in a time where there was a lot of just really like raunchy, nasty, like preteen comedies where all the guys had to be like sex crazed douchebags and all the girls were just super easy. We'll just, you know what I mean? And I just hated that. Not because I'm superior or a prude or anything, but it was just like, oh my gosh, I just don't like the way this is going. And this movie came out that was just unapologetically sweet and sappy, and I just kind of like it. And if I see it on today, I'll watch a little bit of it. And it just kind of gets me a little bit. It is hokey, and I don't know that, Mandy Moore is amazing in that movie, but it's just a sweet story of sweet characters that it doesn't have a lot of the stupid cliches in it. And I like the movie A Walk to Remember. And I stand by that.
I mean, here's the deal. I can't criticize you because I have not watched A Walk to Remember.
And that's probably the right answer, you shouldn't watch it. But
as you said, it came out, around the time it came out was prime years for me being like, well, that's the sort of movie guys see when their girlfriends make them. Yeah. And guess who didn't have somebody to make them? This guy.
Right.
So I didn't watch it.
I think I just happened to see it by a fluke, and I just was like, oh, they didn't try and do the gross, raunchy stuff like that. This was just a movie that was bold enough to just be like, you know what, this is just a sappy love story. And if you're going to ask me what a movie that I like is that people don't think I would like, my answer is A Walk to Remember.
That's a good answer.
And if we need to part ways, we can. If you no longer have any respect for me as a movie person, I understand that.
You know what? I think I'm a little hurt. But I think we can survive this. No, it's
once again, I want to say I'm not saying it's a great movie. I'm just saying for some weird reason, I don't hate that movie.
there's sappy movies that I like, and I'm gonna run through quickly mine. And mine. So here's the thing with mine. It always kind of depends on who the people are, because there are people like who just see different sides of you, right? Like, so some people, when I say these, they'd be like, "I'm surprised you like that because I see you as Coach or something." You know, it's like sort of your really like intense and aggressive and like masculine things or whatever.
Right.
And then there are people who are like, "Oh, I know you as a very snobby movie guy, so I'm surprised you like this goofy thing." You know, so I tried to pick ones that I've actually heard people be surprised when I say that I liked them before. So first one is Mean Girls.
Yeah.
Which people just are always surprised at because they're like, it's a teen girl movie. And I'm like, well, have you seen Mean Girls? It's a good movie. Like, I am unapologetic about I like Mean Girls because, but people are just surprised that I've even seen Mean Girls.
Right.
Which is funny because that's one where I can't even be like, well, you know, I didn't expect to like it, but a girl made me watch it. I watched that in a dorm room with a bunch of dudes. And we all laughed and had a lot of fun.
When that movie came out, there was some buzz around it. And I remember that was the thing where it's like, people were like, hey, this movie's good.
Yeah.
Like, this is Tina Fey wrote it. Tina Fey was kind of, you know, because of Saturday Night Live and stuff, she had some buzz about her. And it was like, that was the narrative around that movie. Like, this is a teen, you know, high school drama type situation, but it's a well-written movie.
Yeah. My next one is The Sound of Music. Again, just an old musical. Two things that normally don't apply to my interest or like. And I think this is just a case of like when I was a little kid, I remember watching it like at my grandmother's house. Yeah. She only had like a couple of movies I could watch. Right. And so like when I was over there, I'd watch this movie a lot. Yeah. And I still just have a fondness for The Sound of Music. Haven't watched it probably in like, I don't know, multiple decades. Probably should watch it again sometime. Really the thing that keeps me from doing it is just the fact that it's like 3 hours long. So, Sound of Music is one. Zootopia. Kind of modern,
straight up Disney, on my list.
I love Zootopia.
Zootopia. So, you know, my kids are older now. We watched it like 2 or 3 months ago. Sat down and watched the whole movie. I don't know why that movie is so fun and charming.
It's incredibly charming. There's something about the relentless, optimistic
of
character
Judy Hopps.
Judy Hopps that like
Officer Judy Hopps.
I'm just in. I'm like.
Maybe that's it. And it's a very visually pleasing movie.
It is.
It is, yeah. Zootopia is on my list. That's such a great answer. And I'll tell you what, this sounds so stupid to say, but I remember watching Zootopia and being like, I want to know what this mystery is. Like, somehow they managed to write like a good, what is going on in Zootopia?
Yeah. And full disclosure, it surprised me that I liked this movie because I remember when the preview came out and I rolled so hard. I was like, oh,
just loud, obnoxious, bright.
Like, what an unclever name.
I know.
And
it's a really good movie. I think it had a couple, I remember in the preview, it basically showed the scene with the sloth. And you're just like, you know what? That's pretty funny. Yeah. Yeah. Zootopia holds up really well. I know that because I've watched it in the last 3 months.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then my last example is a movie that we've talked about on here, us both liking, and this one more surprises me just in the greater context of this filmmaker's filmography, and that's Poor Things. And why? Because I don't like Yorgos Lanthimos films. I don't like movies that get super weird. This movie is a Yorgos Lanthimos movie that gets super weird, and yet somehow this is the one that worked for me.
It's like if you want to see how good Poor Things is, just watch Kinds of Kindness. And be like, that's what Poor Things could have been. Yeah, that's a great choice too.
Yeah. But I mean, it's even like, I was listening to The Big Picture talk about their favorite Tim Burton movies. And they loved a bunch of Tim Burton movies. And I'm like, man, I just struggle with Tim Burton movies because he gets so weird. Like, I just have never understood the appeal of Edward Scissorhands. Yeah. And I think if you're going to compare Poor Things to a movie, Edward Scissorhands is probably a movie that would get compared to Poor Things as far as like the weirdness and the unique world and the visuals. So I was sitting there going like, I can't stand a movie like Edward Scissorhands, and yet somehow I really like Poor Things.
I know. It's weird. I've listed Poor Things as one of my top 5 movies of the year last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that one, maybe the way to put that is movies that I like that I am surprised or I wouldn't have guessed that I would like.
Yeah. That's a good one. So I had Walk to Remember, Zootopia, Frozen, which is real. You can kind of say the same things about Frozen, and maybe a lot of it is just the attachment I have of watching it with my kids when they were little. But I maintain that Frozen is a good movie. It's well done. The music is really good in Frozen. Like again, it's visually very satisfying. Like I like Frozen a lot, and I had a really hard time coming up with the fourth one. Basically, I just went real generic, and I guess it's not even a surprise because I talk about it on here a lot. But sometimes if you do get that label of like a movie nerd, people that like know me but don't know me know me. Mm-hmm. If they know you're a movie nerd, or if they hear like, oh, I do a movie podcast, they assume it's like, oh, Godfather, Casablanca. Sometimes people are really surprised when it's like, no, Commando, Cobra, stuff like that. Which to our listeners is not a surprise because I sing those movies' praises all the time. But it's like when people are sometimes just surprised, like, no, I love a good dumb movie.
Yeah.
Or
there are several dumb comedies I thought about listing, like Down Periscope.
With like Kelsey Grammer's and that. Hot Shots is one for me with Charlie Sheen, where it's like a riff on like Top Gun and stuff like that.
It's so much fun.
It's a ton of fun. Yeah. Sometimes people are just surprised to know that like you can be a movie nerd, but it's like it doesn't mean like you and I have talked about like. What was it that was playing? It was like 4 hours long, and we were like, no.
Lawrence of Arabia.
Lawrence of Arabia is like, no. Yeah. I don't care how much of a movie nerd I am. I'm not sitting through a 4 hour showing of Lawrence of Arabia.
That's right.
So sometimes it's surprising to people to know, like, no, I want to watch something just dumb sometimes. Like Cobra and Commando are always going to be my two best examples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, people... Don't be surprised that we're just guys.
Yeah.
Just normal guys.
And I think the Mean Girls example is so great too, where it's like, and I'll say this to defend my Walk to Remember, like, I don't care what the genre is. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like I'm like, I hate all romantic comedies or, sappy love stories. I just hate them. No, that's not the case at all. I hate it when they're repetitive or when they're poorly written. And that's what I hate. I don't care what kind of movie it is. If it is entertaining, if it is well written like Mean Girls, I'm all in. Like funny characters in funny situations, sharp, clever dialogue. So I'm not limited, like there's not genres like I just won't watch. That's my whole thing. It's like, don't be surprised if I like these movies because there's something likable about them. People are more surprised. It's like, oh, you like a movie like A Walk to Remember? Yeah, because it's kind of just sweet. And I don't mind sweet sometimes.
That doesn't surprise me. You're a sweet guy, Andy.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's right.
Well, now I just feel like I got a weight off my shoulders that I confessed out loud on camera that I like the movie A Walk to Remember.
Yeah. Hey.
There's no going back now. The cat is out of the bag.
All right, final thing we're going to talk about. We'll be quick about this because we've already gone over an hour on the podcast.
Oh, have we really?
I know. This one's flown by for us anyway. Sorry, audience, if you don't feel the same. This final question is, how do we feel about the use of CGI to either bring back characters played by actors who are no longer with us or the de-aging process with CGI? So basically just utilizing characters who we couldn't use in the natural world anymore. How do we feel about that, Andy?
I do not like it. I just don't like it, and I have yet to be proven wrong. The de-aging thing really... To me, I think you talked about this. Like we've got the technology, but we don't quite have the technology. It still doesn't look right. Maybe it's your mind playing tricks on you.
I would say it just never helps that that that's what had to happen.
So the most recent time I saw it, I guess, would probably be last summer. I saw the new Indiana Jones movie, which just wasn't a good movie anyway. And for the first 20 minutes of that movie, 15 minutes maybe, it's de-aged Harrison Ford. And I just thought it looked bad and it was just super, super distracting. So I have yet to be convinced that it's necessary. And now, my all-time favorite director, Scorsese, did it extensively in The Irishman.
Yeah.
And I really like The Irishman, but I just am not convinced that we need it. I'm just not on board.
Yeah, I'm not really on board with it either. Obviously, the most recent example we saw of using the CGI for a character is Alien Romulus, where they brought back...
And I thought that looked... And like it looked like it was like 80% there.
The thing that I'll say is I get with serving the story purpose of bringing that look of an android back. So I understood that. So I wasn't mad at them for trying it. But I'm with you. Like it doesn't really work. And I think limitations are a good thing. We talk about it all the time. Limitations serve creativity. And when you take away... When you tell the people, like, you don't have a limitation anymore. You don't have a limitation of this actor not looking right or the actor being dead. You can just create it.
We just work our way around it.
And
I don't like it.
At a certain point, it's like, that was honestly, that was supposed to be the only realm where you could do that was animation.
Right.
And now we're blurring reality and animation so much that we're saying, well, there's no limits in reality. Well, limits can be a good thing.
Yeah.
And let's just accept those limits and live and work within those.
They are. And then to take it even a step further, one of the worst things, I know we're going long on time, is like I hate and George Lucas did this first, I think, and I'm still salty towards him. Like, hey, I went and touched up Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to go touch up Star Wars. And then he just inserted like some stupid random creatures walking in the background. And you're like, no, I don't want this at all. And like I think you said it best, so I won't even dwell on it. Limitations are good. Yeah. I don't need every movie I go see to be able to do everything. I mean, think about these movies we just rattled off. You know, a lot of them were older when they were working with. I mean, Jaws, I think, is the all-time great example of that opening scene, working within a ton of limitations to create. I think a lot of people would say that's one of the greatest opening scenes in movie history. Limitations are a good thing.
Yes,
I don't need to see this, and it's probably only going to get worse.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah. I mean, that is my fear. And, I mean, a little bit this kind of already happened with the Avatar movies where 10, 20 years from now, what's going to be the difference between animation and reality movies? Mm-hmm. And like, how do you even draw the distinction?
Yeah. Yep. And I like I said, you said it best. Movies, I think, they just thrive on limitations because that's when creativity just boils over. Yeah. So I do not like it. I appreciate the question.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't like it.
Yeah. All right. Next week, I think we'll actually finally have a new movie to talk about. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's not a new theatrical release. Mm-hmm. That's the movie Wolves.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt, George Clooney. I mean,
it was going to be a theatrical release.
Seems like it should be like this big deal.
And then it wasn't. In it. And then they already announced a sequel.
Did they really?
Yes. I'm like, what is happening right now?
If there's a biggest downside to living in a rural area, it's that when movies are released in a limited release, it's never released around us.
No.
Like probably we'd have to go to Chicago to have our best
to even
chance
have a
of seeing
chance.
it. Yeah, and that's 3 hours away. And sorry, like as much as I love movies, I'm not driving 3 hours one way to see a movie.
Yeah.
So we'll watch it streaming.
Yep.
Begrudgingly. I'm a little bummed out about. But
I am too.
I am excited to at least have a new movie to talk about and watch.
I always enjoy talking movies about you, but I think we do our best when we've got the new movies. And we were just spoiled. We had the 6-week run. And
you know, I can say, just looking at the numbers, the audience likes best when we have new movies to talk about. So,
yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. It's what's on their mind. It's what they want to hear about and talk about. So
I might try and see that. There's a new horror movie coming out with Halle Berry in it. Never Let Go. It's from the guy that did like, what did that guy do? Like Crawl and Piranha. And he does like gory, violent horror movies. I might go check that out too. So
yeah, I mean, there's.
Hopefully I hope we're through the worst of our kind of dry spell.
Yeah, and well, the following week is it the following week? I think is Megalopolis, which is, again, I don't know, it might be a disaster, but it's a movie that I'm going to have to see and find out if it's a disaster. For myself,
so
there's that.
Yeah. So we're getting there, I hope.
Yeah.
Bear with us. We want to go see new movies.
Absolutely.
We do, but we don't want to lower our quality just to do a new movie.
We don't want to have an hour-long conversation about something that
we're not.
It's just,
Yeah. Nope. You gotta be passionate about what you're talking about.
Exactly.
But I'll tell you what, this was really fun. I loved the poster's opening scene. Just that thought exercise was a blast.
It was a lot of fun. So people do, as we beg you every week, give us some feedback. Let us know what your favorite posters are. What's your favorite opening scene to a movie? What's a movie that you like that you think people would be surprised about? And if
throw some insults at me for liking A Walk to Remember if you want.
If you disagree with us and you love the de-aging or the bringing people back from the dead with CGI, let us know.
If there's a good example of it, let us know.
That's probably the best way to say
I'm not being sarcastic. Let us know if I'm missing something.
Because, we love thinking about it, and I'll say this. I'm not always great about responding to those comments, so I feel bad as I beg people to comment, and then they comment and I don't say anything. Trust me, I read it and I think about it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I'm just bad at responding. I'm that way in real life with text too. People will be like, I texted you, and I'll be like, oh, I read it. And they're like, you didn't respond. I'm like, right, I forget that I'm supposed to do that part.
Yeah.
So
whoops. That's all right.
But yeah, thank you everybody for joining us.
Appreciate it. See you next week.
See you next time.